finally, England's chief medical officer agrees with me. He's called it appalling. We'll be debating this with someone from the vaping industry. Don't miss that. And motorists in Yorkshire are being chillingly warned to expect the unexpected, as they will no longer be told if a speed camera is watching. We should all be driving more carefully, of course, but are you OK with this authoritarian gotcha surveillance culture? I'm not. Plus, we've got some great newspaper stories this morning, including the Cambridge University students voting for an all-vegan menu and Tony Blair finally making a public case for digital IDs with Tonya Buxton and Joanna Williams. That's all to come, but first, your news from here and around the world.
Hello, good morning to you. It's a minute past 10. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Intensive talks are being held today in a bid to resolve the dispute between nurses and the government. The Royal College of Nursing has paused next week's 48-hour walkout, which would have been the biggest strike this winter. The government says a 3.5% pay rise is affordable. The union wants 5% above inflation, but has indicated it's prepared to meet halfway. Well, as you've just been hearing, Shamima Begum, who left the UK to join the terrorist group Islamic State, is still thought to represent a threat to the country. A government minister has told GBNews there's a lot of information about the 23-year-old that has not been made public. Shamima Begum was 15 when she travelled to Syria with two other girls. Today she'll find out if an appeal against the decision to revoke her British citizenship has been successful. Veterans Affairs Minister Johnny Mercer says there's a reason the Home Secretary took action.
It clearly represents a threat, but, you know, there is a lot of information in that case that's not in the public domain. I don't think it's worth discussing it in public. I think those decisions are made in the courts and in the Home Office, and I'm sure they'll come to the right conclusion.
Well, the Shadow Attorney General, Emily Thornberry, believes people should be allowed to return to the UK to face justice.
What we don't want, and it will be a threat to possibly our country, maybe other countries, is for there to be a large cohort of people who are simply stateless, who have no future, who have no hope, who are living in camps somewhere. What will happen to them? What will they think about, the West? What threat will they be in the long term to the West, or their children will be to the West in the long term? We do need, as an international community, to think this through and not wash our hands of people.
New CCTV has been released of a missing aristocrat and her partner as police renew their appeal to find them. Constance Martin, a convicted sex offender Mark Gordon and their newborn baby were last seen on January the 8th in New Haven in Sussex. A video shows the couple walking near a petrol station wearing big coats and carrying large bags. Authorities believe they've been sleeping in a tent and are concerned about the baby's welfare. Now, despite a warning by retailers that fruit and vegetable shortages will last weeks, the Environment Secretary is set to say the UK has a high degree of food security. Therese Coffey will stress the importance of protecting the environment and sustainable food production when she addresses the National Farmers Union conference later. Her speech comes as supermarkets restrict sales of certain fruit and vegetables because of supply issues following bad weather across Europe and Africa. China's top diplomat has met Russia's foreign minister in Moscow as tensions rise over the war in Ukraine. Wang Yi's talks with Sergei Lavrov come a day after the US said it believes Beijing is considering supplying Russia with military aid, which China denies. Now, the two countries say they oppose all forms of bullying and the introduction of a Cold War mentality. Political activist Bill Browder says China's intervention could change the shape of the war.
Couple days ago at the Munich Security Conference, the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken made a very shocking announcement, which is that he said he believed that China was about to start supplying lethal weapons to Russia. And the reason why that's so significant is that Russia has been running out of weapons. They can't produce the weapons they need for this war.
Another major meeting today. The US President Joe Biden will hold talks with NATO leaders from Eastern Europe in a show of support for their security. Yesterday, the Russian President Vladimir Putin suspended a landmark nuclear arms control treaty and warned Moscow could resume nuclear tests. Well, President Biden responded by stating the United States' support for Ukraine will not waver. And Wizz Air has been branded the worst short-haul airline by passengers in the UK. The consumer group Which says the carrier received 1 star out of 5 for boarding and cabin experience, as well as seat comfort. A customer score of 48% put it below Ryanair, Eurowings and British Airways. Jet2.com scored highest with 80%. This is GB News. More as it happens, but now it's back to Bev.
Very good morning to you. It is 6 minutes past 10. Now, it's a big day in the Shamima Begum case. Obviously, we've all been following this incredibly closely for the last, 8 years since she left to join ISIS. We're going to find out during this show whether she is still thought to represent a threat to the country. We'll find out if an appeal against the decision to revoke her British citizenship has been successful. Well, Harjap Singh Bangal is an immigration lawyer and joins me now. Good morning, Harjap. Tell us what exactly will happen today. Who is making this decision and what will it mean?
So the judges will make a decision on the fact that whether the citizenship that's cancelled by the British government of Shamima Begum, whether that should stay cancelled or whether she is a British citizen and should be brought back here for trial and sentencing, like some argue. So at the moment, the British government are saying, well, Shamima, we cancelled Shamima's citizenship because she's eligible to apply for Bangladeshi citizenship through her father. The Bangladesh authorities are saying, no, she isn't, and if she ever comes here, we're going to hang her to death. But she's not born in Bangladesh. She hasn't lived in Bangladesh. They're saying it's Britain's responsibility because she's born and bred in the UK. So the law actually says that if you deprive someone of citizenship, you can't make them stateless or without an actual nationality. So Shamima is arguing, in effect, that by taking away my British citizenship, you're making me stateless. The British government are arguing, no, actually, you are eligible for Bangladeshi citizenship. Bangladesh is saying, no, she's not one of ours. If she comes here, we're going to hang her. So that is essentially where we're at. And today the decision will be made as to what actually happens to her.
So it's on a point of law, actually, about the citizenship, as opposed to whether she is a risk to any particular population that she might be returned to. Will that come into it at all, Harjap?
Yes, that will come into it at all, because the whole reason the citizenship has been cancelled has been using that clause that she's a threat to the public. So the government will have to prove now that she's a threat to the public, and they had no choice but to cancel her citizenship because she's eligible for Bangladeshi citizenship. If it can prove all of them points, then the government will win. If it cannot prove all of them points, then Shamima will win, but a win in effect as so far as that she'll be allowed back here for trial, be held in jail, and probably spend a lot of time in jail. So whether you see that as a win or not,
how do you know? How do they accumulate the evidence to suggest that she is a threat? How does the burden of proof sit? What will they bring to the table to argue that she is a risk? Psychological analysis, things that she said in the past, things that she said recently.
All of the above, Bev, and also her associates, who she's been meeting with, photographic evidence, who she met with, who she hung around with, what crimes she may have participated in or not. All of that will be taken into consideration. And what the threat level is now. What information does she have? What links does she have? What expertise does she have? Has she handled weapons? Does she have bomb-making experience? Is she a threat to her neighbours? That is all going to be considered. Shamima, on the other hand, will probably argue, well, hold on, you have people like that already in the UK who are in prison, i.e. IRA terrorists, and they haven't been sent back to Ireland, and they've in fact been kept in prison in the UK, and they do have another nationality, and they may be been born and bred in Ireland. So that would be the argument, the two arguments that are put forward.
And how public will that information be made in the hearing? Will we get to know the detail of that decision, or will that be confidential?
A lot of that stuff will be confidential. And if we really want stuff to be made public, then we ideally need to bring her back here for trial and have a trial and where the press can report on it, and then the details will come out. So the government are saying, we heard your government representatives say that no, a lot of the stuff we can't release to the public because it's confidential. Well, surely the public will say, well, why don't you have a trial here and let us have the information? If she's involved in a lot more, like the government is alleging, then surely we need to know that, rather than saying, no, we know, but we can't tell anybody.
And what could she be charged with here, Hajab? What actual crime would she be deemed to have committed by leaving the UK and joining ISIS?
Oh, terrorist activities, being involved in terrorist activities, plotting against the state. She might be involved in multiple murders. She might be, accomplice to all of that.
There's going to be very little evidence. I mean, there'll be very little evidence. I'm just thinking how lawyers think. You are one. Don't be offended. Yeah. But I'm just thinking, if you were defending Shamima Begum, if she returned to this country and was charged with terrorist activities, they would say, well, this is over the passage of time. We don't have the evidence. There's no way of knowing whether she was involved in anything. She was 15 years old when she got taken. She was groomed. It'd be a very hard case to... I find it very hard to imagine that she would end up in prison, Hajab, once she gets here.
Well, a lot of the stuff she has confessed to. So there are confessions of some stuff that she was involved in, and there might be witnesses. So the government would have to dig that up. Like any case, if I was to accuse you of something, Bev, and put you in court for that, I should have the right evidence before I drag you through the courts. And the government should have the right evidence. Now, the government is saying they have the evidence, but they're saying they can't reveal it. But what in a court case in the UK that would allow them to do is reveal their hand. And so, we should, as members of the public, know what she's been involved in and what she haven't, especially if she's been plotting against our country. And let's see the evidence, and then let's see what's going on. Just as if exactly the equivalent of this would be somebody in Australia who's been charged with terrorism, and the Australians say, well, we're going to send you back to Britain because your granddad was born there, and we're going to deport you there. You're not our responsibility. So we've got to be wary of that. Could that open a precedent up for that? Because essentially that's what the government is trying to do. It's how the whole thing is around responsibility. Do we bring her back here and try her and sentence her here? Or do we just say, no, sorry, not one of ours, Gov, she made her own bed, let her lie in it.
And it's such a high-profile case. Hajab, thank you so much. That was really fascinating. Hajab Singh Bangal explaining the nuances of this case. What do you think? GBViews at gbnews.uk. We're expecting this announcement any minute now. We will bring in our Home Security Editor, Mark White, into the studio when that happens. Now, the last time we talked about this next topic, the huge number of children who are vaping, you were as incensed as me. Finally, the UK's Chief Medical Officer has caught up with us. Sir Chris Whitty, he's criticised the marketing of vapes. He's described the marketing as appalling, saying it's clear that some products are designed to appeal to children. Well, research published last July found the number of young people vaping, is increasing, with many being influenced by social media. Well, Julie Cook is a journalist who caught her 14-year-old son vaping, and John Dunn, the Director-General of the Vaping Industry Association. Thank you both ever so much for joining me. I think this is such an important discussion to have. Julie, let me come to you first. You've got a teenage son then. How do you see, in your own opinion, the children, the teenagers around you, how do they view vaping? They see it as kind of harmless, don't they?
Yeah, but they see vaping as harmless and cool and trendy and the thing everybody does. We've all seen it, not just in my child who I caught with a vape and told him off and haven't heard any more about that, but all his peers, a lot of his peers vape, a lot of kids you see around the street are vaping and holding a vape. It's kind of ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and it's very much the thing to do if you're a teenager.
So, John Dunn, Director-General of the Vaping Industry Association. These children think that vapes are harmless, are they?
Well, absolutely not. No young person should be vaping. It's illegal for anybody under the age of 18 to vape in this country. It's also illegal for anybody to buy a vaping product for anybody under the age of 18. But disposables are not new. They've been around for over 10 or 11 years. But what we've seen over probably the last 18 months, an increase in the use of vaping products.
I'm so sorry, John. Just so sorry to interrupt you. We've got a problem with your audio. We really want to hear what you've got to say. Let me just go back to Julie while we try and fix that. It's interesting, Julie, to hear what we could then of John saying that there are clear harms associated with vaping and that children shouldn't be doing it. That message is not getting through to them. It's seen as the safe alternative to smoking.
Exactly. The first thing is it has been deemed as the safe alternative to smoking, in that we're encouraging people who smoked for many years to vape instead, to sort of come off it. That's fine if that's how it's being used. But the trouble is, these vapes are designed to appeal to children. They're strawberry flavour, bubblegum flavour, they're pink, they're bright green, they're bright blue. They're obviously and cynically aiming them at children. I mean, you can't deny that. No 50-year-old who's trying to get over smoking is going to go out and look for a strawberry flavoured pink vape. They're aiming at teenagers and underage, and it's cynical, and it's cynical marketing.
Go on, John, respond to that.
No problem. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you well, thanks.
Okay. Well, first of all, these flavours have been around for many years. This is not a new situation. And most adults use fruit-flavoured vaping products. But it's the point I was trying to make earlier on. It is illegal in this country for anybody under the age of 18 to purchase vaping products. It's also illegal for anybody to purchase it for them. But what's falling down here is this is not being enforced. And one of the things that we've called for as an association is increased fines up to £10,000 per instance. We've called for licensing of vape retailers, because at the moment anybody can sell vaping products, which we think is wrong.
OK, both of you, I'm so sorry. I really wanted to continue this conversation. We'll pick it up another day. We've got the breaking news about Shamima Begum. Thank you so much. Mark White is with me in the studio. What's the latest, Mark?
Well, that Special Immigration and Appeals Court, the ruling has said that Shamima Begum will not be allowed to return to the UK. In other words, that the decision by the then Home Secretary Sajid Javid to strip her of her British citizenship was lawful on the grounds that she was effectively entitled to dual nationality, that she could, if she so desired, be a Bangladeshi citizen, being the daughter of Bangladeshi parents, and she was entitled to a Bangladeshi passport. Now, of course, her lawyers had argued that actually Bangladesh don't want anything to do with her, have said that if she ever goes to that country, that she would be tried and executed for her crimes with the terror group IS. But clearly, having viewed up all of the evidence and the decision that was made then by Sajid Javid, the SIAC, the Special Immigration Appeals Court, have decided that he was right. This clearly would have been a big blow to the government had they sided with Shamima Begum and her lawyers, who had argued that actually she was trafficked to Syria for the purposes of sexual exploitation and marriage to a man, an ISIS fighter, a Dutch national who himself had gone to join the caliphate out in Syria. They said that, you know, she was only 15 at the time, therefore she had been groomed online and trafficked, and in that sense she was a victim. However, coming down to the essence of the argument about whether it was right on the grounds of national security to strip her of that citizenship, clearly SIAC said yes, it was. I'm still looking at the detail, and when I get a bit more of the detail and the reasoned argument, we'll bring that to you. But a very significant development nonetheless.
Does she have a right to appeal again?
Yes, she has a right to appeal, just as the government would have had a right to appeal if today's decision had gone in her favour. So it's not the end of the road by any means. You know, it just reminds me of what we're seeing with Rwanda and this never-ending saga of the British government to try to get asylum seekers to that country to be processed, which is just being dragged through the courts as well. So there is no doubt, I think, she's been fighting really since 2019, since Sajid Javid decided to strip her citizenship for the right to be allowed back into this country and to gain her citizenship. Now, she claims, and her lawyers claim, that send me back to the UK, I'm more than willing to stand trial, not that she would have any choice in the matter anyway. However, the government has been very reluctant to go down that road, and for one key reason, it's very difficult to try to put a case before the British courts about events that took place in a lawless country like Syria. And although there is intelligence out there that has been gathered over a number of years by key intelligence assets out in Syria, that according to sources that have spoken to me, suggest that, you know, she was part of an religious enforcement group that would go around these areas in Syria that would enforce strict Sharia law, that she was involved in sewing up suicide vests onto ISIS fighters, and other, you know, concerning reports about what she was up to in that time. Although there's intelligence out there that tell the British government that she would be a dangerous individual to be allowed back in to this country, it's difficult then to put that evidence before a court.
Isn't it? That was the case that I was making before to my guest about the fact that I feel like it would be very hard to build anything convincing, as you say, the burden of proof. The evidence base would be so high to ever see that she would end up behind bars. What will happen now then, Mark? I mean, like you say, she has the right to appeal this. I expect another year, possibly, this might drag on for?
Yes, because, you know, although her supporters will say, you know, here she is living in squalor in the Al-Roj camp in northern Syria, and I'm sure that conditions are not as pleasant as being back here in the UK. But the fact is, she's not on her own in that sense. She has got the full weight of a machine behind her, which are, you know, immigration lawyers, human rights charities and alike, who are there and fighting this case for her. And at every turn, they will go and exhaust every possible avenue to try to get this woman back into the country.
She's also got a PR team behind her now, Mark. She's
of course
had the most extraordinary PR
It's exactly what I say. It is a machine.
Yeah.
But, of course, they would argue that on the other side, there is a machine in the form of the state apparatus in this particular country, the Home Office, the government, the intelligence services and alike, that are, you know, against her best interests. So both these sides will still, unfortunately, argue this out in the courts for some time to come.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark. Let me know what you think about that news. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Shamima Begum does not get the right to come back here and have her British citizenship reinstated. Now, still to come. Every citizen, that word, I'm having trouble with that today, should be issued with a digital ID, according to Sir Tony Blair and William Hague. I'll be giving you my thoughts on that in just a few moments.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It's 10:25. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. Still to come, drivers have been told to expect the unexpected in Yorkshire as they plan to remove speed camera signs. It feels a bit like a surveillance state to me. But first, my panel are here this morning. I'm delighted to be joined by broadcaster and restaurateur Tonya Buxton and author and academic Joanna Williams. Right, ladies, I need to get your reaction, first of all, about Shamima Begum. Apparently, it was right to have her citizenship revoked. That's been proven this morning. She won't be coming back anytime soon.
I'm so surprised and I'm so pleased that the right thing has been done. I'm really pleased because if this hadn't have been done, goodness knows what floodgates would be opened. So she doesn't have the right to be back here. She's stitched on suicide bombs onto suicide bombers that wanted to kill our boys. Our boys are dead because of her. You know, our brave soldiers who went out there to fight for freedom are dead because of her. So she has no right to be in this country. So I think justice has been done there.
Joanna, did you see any of the documentaries that she did, the podcasts that she did? She's been on a big PR drive.
I mean, she absolutely has. And to me, this is the most sickening thing, that she's been turned into a celebrity. I mean, she's a jihadi bride who, as Tonya rightly points out, has been responsible for people losing their lives. She's celebrated the fact that people have lost their lives. And yet she's been turned, not by her to a huge extent, but by the BBC, by journalists who've beaten her door down to interview her, to turn her into this kind of martyr-like victim figure who was supposed to be seen as some kind of celebrity.
Did either of you watch the sit-down interview documentary that the BBC did with her?
I watched part of it. I was sickened by it. I'm sickened that my tax-paying money... This is another reason why I feel that the BBC should be defunded, because it's spending my money that I work hard for on projects like this, and that's not what I want it spent on.
Did you watch it, Jo?
Again, just bits of it.
I watched the whole thing, and I tell you why I watched it, because I really wanted to have an informed opinion on this. I really wanted to make my own judgment as to whether I felt she could be trusted or not, and I came away with it thinking, I don't think she can.
No,
I don't think she can. I sympathise with the idea that she went at 15 years old. 15-year-old girls, as we both know, think they know everything and they know nothing, right? So I understand that she might have been vulnerable at that point. But what I saw when I watched that documentary was somebody that still wasn't being honest. I think there are huge question marks over what happened to her 3 children. I didn't buy what happened to those. I didn't entirely buy that. There was a lot that she still wouldn't confess to. There was still a lot of names that she wouldn't give up in that conversation. So I feel like justice has probably been done this morning.
Absolutely. And, I mean, let's bear in mind, 15-year-olds, you're right, they do get confused sometimes. They're sometimes not quite sure what's the difference between right and wrong. But for most 15-year-olds, when you're talking about what's the difference between right and wrong, you're talking about them nicking a lipstick from Boots or, you know, not paying... Vaping, exactly. You're not talking about them running away to join a death cult, which is what Shamima Begum did.
I know it was a decade ago, but we were all 15 once, and we remember what we were like then. And we could absolutely tell you what was right and wrong.
I was scared of my mum, never mind joining ISIS at 15. Right. This is a big story. Some of us have been talking about this for, about, I don't know, 3 years, about maybe more, the fact that we're all heading towards a digital ID future in which all of our life will be controlled by our phones and the government will know where we are every step of the way. Well, finally, it's made it onto the front page of the papers today. Thank goodness. This is Tony Blair and William Hague have united to suggest it is time to give digital IDs to all. Let's just look at the detail of this a little bit, Tonya. What will this mean for our lives, do you think?
OK, so what this will mean for our lives, so the gruesome twosome have come up with this dystopian thing. And what you've got to fast forward into reality that's happening now. So this, I'm not talking about some kind of bad movie now. Happening now in China, where they are digitalised, is a social credit system. So you and I, who spoke out about lockdown, we knew the damage it would be doing to our children. We knew the damage it would do to our healthcare. We knew the damage it would do to our society and to our funds. And we're in this state because of what they did to us over lockdown. You and I would be locked up. And if we weren't locked up, we would have no social credit. You wouldn't be able to go to the cinema. You wouldn't be able to go out. You'd be completely controlled because you didn't have the same opinion of those that are controlling the digital IDs.
Now, there'll be people sat at home going, oh, that Tonya Buxton's been on the gin already this morning and it's only 10:30. This is not about that, Tonya. This is about being able to just log in and see your driving licence, and it's about able to get a bank account without having to have 2 people sign it. Simple as that, Joanna, or more malevolent?
I think the thing is, even if it is as simple as that, I still have a problem with it. So what's being talked about is a digital ID that people could have on their mobile phones. Well, for a start, not everybody has a smartphone. Even in this day and age, not everybody has a smartphone. And why should they? Exactly. My mother wouldn't be able to cope with one. And then if she started going into the bank or trying to do any of those most basic functions that you do in society, and she was told, well, you have to show us your digital ID on your smartphone, it would mean that she wouldn't be able to participate in life as fully as she does at the moment.
Bear in mind, I mean, we don't know yet what age you would have the digital ID. I don't think that's in this particular detail, is it? But they're talking about appointing executive ministers who are not MPs or peers to rewire Whitehall's approach to science. So basically non-democratic people making decisions for you. Encouraging the use of artificial intelligence assistants in schools to help teachers. More teachers, please, not robots.
Exactly.
They're talking about curtailing the power of the Treasury to micromanage spending on science and technology. What does that mean?
I mean, all of this really boils down to curtailing democracy, about taking decisions away from people who, even if we disagree with them, were voted in, and that means we've got the power to vote them back out, and handing decisions over to these technocrats who sit there and try and work out what's best for us, and we have no say over it. As far as I'm concerned, this is a plan which has been cooked up by Tony Blair and William Hague, or they're fronting it, while ex-prime ministers or ex-leaders of political parties are ex for a reason, and they've been booted out by the voters, and they shouldn't be sneaking back in through the back door.
And there's money in this.
That's the one.
They will be profiting. There will be people who want to push this through who will profit beyond their wildest dreams.
But we're seeing it now, aren't we? We're seeing it with how the government didn't use our money well when it came to the COVID, lots of COVID kind of deals that they were making for making COVID tests and whatever. So these unelected people will decide where this money goes. More money to create some super pension funds that will invest in UKs and startups and high-value businesses. They're going to be getting money for this as well. That's another way they're going to get money.
But I'm so glad we're talking about it.
Yes.
I am so glad this is starting a public conversation. I hope every daytime show today is discussing the pros and cons of this. I bet they're not. Right, moving on now. Thank you, guys, for kicking us off. Right. If you live in Yorkshire today, or anywhere really, you want to watch this, it's coming to Yorkshire first, but it will be coming to a town near you soon. It's to do with driving and what you can get away with. That's all after your morning's news with Aaron Armstrong.
10:33, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. As you've just been hearing, the breaking news in the last half an hour, Shamima Begum, who left the UK to join the terrorist group Islamic State, has lost her appeal against the decision to remove her British citizenship. She was 15 when she travelled to Syria with two other girls in 2015. Now, her lawyer says she was a victim of child trafficking, but her case has been dismissed on all grounds. Intensive talks are being held today in a bid to resolve the dispute between nurses and the government. The Royal College of Nursing's paused next week's 48-hour walkout, which would have been the biggest strike this winter. The government says a 3.5% pay rise is affordable. The union wants 5% above inflation, but has indicated it is prepared to meet halfway. New CCTV footage has been released of a missing aristocrat and her partner as police renew their appeal to find them. Constance Martin, convicted sex offender Mark Gordon and their newborn baby were last seen in Newhaven in Sussex on January the 8th. Authorities believe they've been sleeping in a tent and are concerned about the baby's welfare. Up to 260 British steel jobs are at risk after the company proposed to close the coke ovens at its plant in Scunthorpe. The GMB union says it's devastating news for the workers and described the government's investment in the industry as a sticking plaster. TV online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Bev will be back in just a moment.
Don't go anywhere. Up next, drivers being told to expect the unexpected. And what do you think Cambridge University students have just voted for? See you shortly. We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview channel 236.
And YouView channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Good morning, this is Bev Turner today on GB News. You've been getting in touch about the news that Shamima Begum will not be coming home. She is not going to have her British citizenship reinstated. That news broke about 20 minutes ago, if that, actually. You've been getting in touch. Linda says that this country will take anyone or any criminals. She might as well come with all the rest of the illegal immigrants and criminals. Once you go to Britain, the government bend over backwards to accommodate you. If you're a hard-working British person, the government tries to do everything to take it away from you. That's why a lot of people don't want to work. What a sad indictment, Linda. And Andy says, in this country, we have an official Secret Act and Secret Service for a reason. We do not go around publishing classified information that could potentially damage our state or put its people at risk. It's a huge story today. Let me know. Keep your messages coming about that. Now, speeding drivers in West Yorkshire are being warned that they should expect to be caught as changes are made to how safety cameras are used in the county. With one change being there won't be any signs that you're approaching anymore. Nick Freeman is Britain's leading motorist and road traffic lawyer. Hi, Nick. Good to see you. This is a change. This is a change in policy, isn't it? So at the moment, when we're driving along, we see a speed camera sign. You think, oh, I better be a bit careful. Frankly, you can't drive more than 20 miles an hour anywhere in London now anyway. But they're taking those away. Does that feel morally like the right thing to do?
It feels like clandestine policing. In my view, the whole purpose of these signs is to warn motorists and to get motorists to slow down. And I think if you remove signs, what will happen is motorists will actually speed up. And yes, there will be more prosecutions, there will be more people speeding, because the signage is a sort of form of education. It's a warning, but it's a form of education. And that's obviously what motorists need. And no system's perfect. But I think the whole idea of, well, let's just remove the signs, it smacks, doesn't it, of let's fill the coffers. It's what I call sloppy and lazy policing. And, you know, what I would like to see is police on the roads, in police cars, whether they be marked or unmarked, ideally both, to deal with bad driving, because really speeding is only a very small aspect of bad driving. And what we need is a police presence rather than a reliance on what's now going to become a secretive way of testing your speed. So I don't think it's going to reduce road safety. I think actually it's going to exacerbate it and cause problems.
See, the wording around the announcement as well was very kind of, it was very sinister. It said drivers must expect the unexpected. When did it change that motorists have such a dysfunctional relationship to those who are enforcing the rules of the road? It feels very much like us against them.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? Most motorists are responsible, working people going about their lives, not doing any harm to anyone, compared with people who commit burglaries, thefts, assaults. And what happens when you do those, when you commit those offences, you get a crime reference number and often precious little else. The motorist, of course, tends to be someone, if they get done, they pay their fine, they accept their culpability, or they decide to fight it. They deal with it responsibly. And the police, it wasn't that long ago that the police used to stop you for speeding, and that would have a salutary effect on the way you drove. Just seeing a police car would slow you down. And when we have these signs that exist at the moment, they do slow you down, even if there isn't a police camera there, a speed camera there. Yeah. And the removal of signs will just cause the opposite effect. And I don't understand how this is going to improve road safety, because that's what we should all be aiming for. Not just let's grab the motorist because it's an easy prey. They're going to pay up. This is ideal for a time when everyone's struggling financially, including, of course, the motorists. So I think it's a foolhardy idea. I think they need to go back to the drawing board, and they definitely need to have police on the roads so that they deal with other aspects of bad driving rather than just this myopic approach to speeding.
I mean, I want to be really clear here. I don't want it to sound like I'm sitting here saying everyone should be allowed to drive whatever speed they like at day and night. I'm a very, very careful driver. I've only done 2 speed awareness courses. But what I found when I got my speeding tickets was that I'd gone in one of those country roads. It's very common. You go from the 20 miles or the 40, 50 mile an hour zone as it was, and you go straight into a 20, 30 without clear signage. And it feels like this gotcha. Like, we've gotcha. There was no cars there. There's no school. There's nobody around. There's nobody pulling out. There's no hazards that might be there. But we've got you. It's very profitable, though, isn't it, this, handing out these sorts of tickets?
Well, I think from the motorist perspective, it doesn't really make sense. It's one-way traffic. It's always reduce the speed rather than increase it. So you can be sitting on a motorway at 70 miles an hour and it's empty. It could be the early hours of the morning. There's nothing about, and 70 miles an hour is just too slow. So I think the government need to completely rethink their approach to speeding, because it's in a mess. I think on recent surveys, over 50% of motorists admit speeding every time they get into a car. So the system isn't working, and I'm not in any way advocating that you should speed, but I am advocating a sensible approach where speeding makes sense to everyone. It's there for a sensible reason, as opposed to just let's grab some cash from the motorists because they'll pay up, they're easy prey. And that's what appears to be happening more and more. We seem to be vilifying the motorists rather than supporting them, and our roads are becoming safer and safer all the time. So this announcement by West Yorkshire Police makes no sense at all.
Yeah. All right, Nick, thank you so much. Top traffic lawyer there, Nick Freeman. Might get his number in case I need him next time I get speed awareness, of course. Right, my guests are back with me, Tonya Buxton and Joanna Williams. Let's talk about the Scottish SNP, the problem of the Scottish SNP, the leader. Right, Nicola Sturgeon, you were live on air with me last week, Tonya, when Nicola Sturgeon resigned. So, in the vacuum that she has left, there have stepped 2 potential candidates, 2 frontrunners, Kate Forbes and Humza Yousaf. Let's talk about them, shall we? Kate Forbes, I've got a little bit of video I want to play you to understand Kate Forbes in a little bit more detail. She's from Dingwall in Scotland. She spent part of her upbringing in Glasgow in India. She studied history at University of Cambridge and Edinburgh. She was employed as an accountant in the banking industry. Not winning you over yet? Let's have a little look at her doing an interview about some of her faith values.
In your view, wrong then for people to have children outside of marriage? That's your view, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you're asking me, would I impose my views on other people? Ultimately, that's what you're asking.
No, I'm just asking what your view is. So, is that correct? In
terms of me personally, that is the approach I would practice. But you're also asking me, do I think that some of my family who've done that are wrong? Do I think that some of my friends who've done that are wrong? I mean, I accept them.
She accepts them. Talking on Sky News there, Kate Forbes, managing to condescend everybody who's ever had a child outside of wedlock. Joanna Williams.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, and I don't share these views that Kate Forbes is expressing. But having said that, what a breath of fresh air to actually have a politician who says what they think.
That's such a low bar.
Well, but so many of them are really wrapped up in sound bites, don't say what they think, are disingenuous. It actually makes us very, very cynical. And to have somebody who's got principles, doesn't shy away and pretend not to have those principles, and does actually tell people honestly what she thinks. Well, personally, I would far rather have that, even if it's things that I don't personally agree with, than somebody like your Tony Blair or your William Hague, who we were talking about earlier, who've perfected the art of the soundbite, who've perfected the art of not actually telling us what they think on any given occasion. And you can agree or you can disagree with what Kate is saying here, but my goodness me, I don't think it's as bonkers as what some of the other people who are coming out with who think, you know, a man can become a woman just by wearing a dress. Far rather have something that's actually based in principles and values.
Well, her rival is a practising Muslim as well. The chances are he would agree with her.
Yeah.
But he said I would not let it. He hasn't been drawn on it, actually. Some might say he's been cleverer because this is potentially political suicide. To admit what Kate Forbes said there, that she doesn't support gay marriage as well, is the other thing. She said she doesn't believe in abortion. He probably has those same values, but he's been quite clever, and he said, I wouldn't let this inform my policy. She also said the same thing, but she's being held to account.
Yeah, she's being held to account. She said that she wouldn't seek to reverse gay marriages or to reverse any of the things that have already happened, which I think is quite an important point. And I feel the same way you do, in the sense that we are sick of politicians lying to us who can't say what's as clear as day. You know, Keir Starmer cannot tell you what a woman is.
Yeah.
You know, basic principles of life cannot be said honestly anymore. And she's right. She said people wanted politicians to give straight answers, so she's given a straight answer. Do I agree with her? Absolutely not. But, you know, I mean, I'm more concerned about kind of other more draconian, maybe misogynistic laws that might be brought in from some other faiths rather than what she's saying here. But at least it's true, it's honest. She says it won't let her cloud the way that she's running a country. I don't know what that means.
She also said that she wouldn't support the controversial gender recognition reform bill.
Goodness.
I mean, the fact that she's off on maternity leave apparently is one of the reasons why Nicola Sturgeon wants to push it through if she could so quickly, whilst Kate Forbes was off on maternity leave. But we will have to wait and see. There will be 100,000 members or so of the SNP who will vote on the leadership election. I think the winner, the successor to Nicola Sturgeon will be announced, I think it's the end of March, 27th of March. Right, moving on. Cambridge University students. Now, these are supposed to be the clever ones. They're meant to be the clever ones. They clearly don't understand anything about diet and how it affects your brain growth, because they've just voted for entirely vegan menu for catering at the university.
I really struggle with this, and I'll tell you why I struggle.
You're not a vegan, are you?
No, I'm not a vegan. I'm absolutely not a vegan. But I kind of think, you know, whatever you want to eat, you know, if it's no business of mine, you can have all kinds of bonkers diets you want to, but don't limit my choice.
Well, they've just limited everybody's choice.
Exactly. So I could understand campaigning to have more vegan options on the menu, have vegetarian, vegan, meat options, whatever you like, and then people are free to choose. But when you make a decision like this, that you want to ban meat altogether, and not just ban meat, but all dairy things, then you're actually limiting people's choices. You're saying that your choice is so good and you are so confident that that's the right choice, you're going to impose it on everyone else, and I don't think you've got the right to do that.
But there isn't. I mean, I think they're doing this for various reasons. Health, to save the planet, of course, that has to be the reason for everything these days, and also, I think, just for animal welfare, OK, again, arguably.
But which animals? OK, so this is wrong. OK, I'm going to stand up. This is a completely wrong thing to do. It's wrong for the animal, it's wrong for the environment, and it's really wrong for our health. And I'll take each point. So when you're talking about kind of the monocrops that they have, for example, in America, to make almond milk because they don't want us to have cow's milk. So we know that they've killed nearly 2 billion bees. Now, we need bees to survive. The ecosystem of the planet needs bees to survive. This type of farming that they do kills off our ecosystem. One cow will feed millions of people, but this type of monocrop will kill off the bees, which will then kill off society. The other thing is things like almond milk, when they kind of obliterate what they're doing, and then they kill the rabbits, the mice, the wildlife that's around there in order to get the almonds, in order to get the crops that they want for these vegan things. They are killing animals.
So the collateral damage of this brilliantly marketed vegan option is potentially worse for our ecosystems.
And for the animals and our ecosystems. You know, I don't believe in battery farming, but I believe in grass-fed, you know,
well cared for animals.
But the most important thing for me is veganism is not a sustainable way for humans to live. We are not built to be vegans. There is nothing that you cannot get B12, you can't get hemine, you can't get retinol A from vegan food. For someone like me, for example, who's anemic, I can't get A from spinach. I don't absorb it. I have to get it from animal products. You know, vitamin K2, which stops the calcification of your bones, can only be got from things like fatty cheeses and fatty dairy. So health-wise, it's a completely wrong diet as well. If it's a choice that you make as an adult, that's fine. But no way should this be pushed on people. We should have choices.
It's extraordinary, really, isn't it? I mean, Scotland now don't have meat in children's schools or in elderly care homes. The government basically the state has taken meat away there, and they're doing the same at Cambridge University, Jo.
Like I said, I just find it completely bizarre. I mean, just out of respect, I'm a carnivore or, you know, eat anything. I wouldn't have a guest come to my house and force them to eat meat. I mean, that would be reprehensible.
Do you know what I've thought about doing recently? When you go to like friends' houses who are vegetarians or vegans, and I thought about taking a steak and just say, look, I don't. Would you mind? I mean, because I feel like in the same way that we accommodate vegetarianism, when people come to your house if they don't eat meat, you cook them a great vegetarian dish. Well, can you accommodate my carnivorism, please?
Absolutely. But you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. I know you wouldn't do that. But like, I wouldn't force someone to eat meat. So why do people who are vegans think that because they assume they've got the moral high ground that they can force their lifestyle choices onto everyone else? Now, how dare they?
Do you know what? We kind of struggled to get a vegan to talk this morning. And I was like, what do you mean you struggle? Every vegan you know, the first thing they tell you is that they're a vegan. Right, moving on. Talking of food, perfect segue. London Mayor Sadiq Khan is announcing that he is giving free school meals to every single primary school pupil from the next academic year. £130 million he's spending on this. One-off funding could help more than 270,000 children in the capital during the academic year 23 to 24. Now, some families can absolutely afford to pay for their child's school lunch. Why on earth are we giving this out without means testing it, Tonya?
Well, it's because he wants to get voted in as mayor next year. This is just a kind of pop thing that he's doing. It's only for 1 year, and it's a complete and utter waste of £130 million. What they should be doing, if he's got all of this extra money and he wants to throw it around, is to reassess the meals that kids are getting, because a lot of the stuff they're getting in school is not healthy, and to look and put more bodies in, people in, and safeguard for the children that might not be eating well. Because the poor children do get free school meals. My children, I can afford to pay for my children's meals. I do not need the state to pay for my children's meals, and I'm happy to do that as a good citizen. If I've got the money, I don't want to take it from someone else. I will pay for it.
Absolutely.
But if he's got money to throw around and he really wants to do something proper, then reassess the food they're feeding our children. Because a lot of the time, it's not great.
No.
It's very processed, and as you said, there's many of them don't even have meat on them anymore.
Well, no doubt the next thing will come along with this free school meal will be that it's vegetarian or vegan in order to save the planet. I'm so sick of this crystal ball, Joanna, telling me what the future looks like.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And clearly, this is an electoral bribe, or it seems very much like a crude electoral bribe. But I think more problematically, you know, over the past 5-6 years, we've seen how kids' school lunches seem to have become a real political issue.
Haven't they?
It shouldn't be rocket
political
science.
Hot potato, one might say.
Exactly, and Marcus Rashford campaigning around it. You know, everybody seems to have something to say about what kids eat for their lunch at school. It's not rocket science. Give them a decent meal at lunchtime and make it affordable. I think you're absolutely right. Most parents are able to afford it. And if parents can't afford it, then that's the problem.
Yes.
You know, we need to be looking at why, and often it's parents who are working as well. You know, why are people's wages so low that they can't then afford to feed their own kids? That's where the problem is. I think as soon as the state steps in and starts providing these lunches, then you're absolutely right. It becomes a political thing, and it becomes about implementing the vegan menu and doing away with meat, and it becomes much more of a thing about taking over part of child rearing, part of parenting. A really important part of parenting gets taken away and handed over.
Absolutely. Right, thank you both very much. Just a few more of your views on the news that Shamima Begum will not be coming home. That broke this morning. Paul has said she shouldn't be allowed back. We would have to pay to keep her. She turned her back on the UK. She wants her cake. She can now eat it. And Peter says Begum should be dealt in the country she allegedly committed the crimes. If she found guilty, she should be sentenced under the laws of that country. Why should the British taxpayer cover all of these costs? Right, that's the end of the first hour. We've still got a lot to come in the next hour. In the next few moments, I'll be discussing why you might be struggling to get your hands on veg in your local shop. It's all about our supermarkets rationing. That's right, rationing your food. See you in a second.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Outbreaks of rain are crossing the country, followed by showers, but also brighter spells into the west during the course of the afternoon. It'll feel a bit colder compared with recent days as temperatures head a bit closer to average behind this cold front. This is the front that's brought the outbreaks of rain and an awful lot of cloud as well. Behind that front, although the rain will continue for a time in East Anglia and the southeast, the rain does clear eastern Scotland and eventually parts of northeast England start to dry up. But further showers follow into the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, as well as Wales and the southwest, accompanied by a brisk wind, making it feel colder. Temperatures back in the mid to high single figures by and large, rather than the double figures. However, there will be some further rain at times for the northeast of England, pushing into the Midlands, as well as parts of the southeast through the evening. Some showers continue further west, predominantly around coasts, but otherwise lengthy clear spells, especially for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's here where there will be a widespread frost with temperatures in sheltered spots dipping below freezing. But we keep the cloud across central and southern parts of the UK, as well as some outbreaks of rain first thing Thursday. That will keep things frost-free, but it will also be a damp start in places. The rain tends to fizzle out by the afternoon, brighter skies follow, and a decent slice of sunshine for the likes of northern and central England, Wales as well. But further spells of rain push into the north and northwest of Scotland by the end of the afternoon, accompanied by strengthening wind with coastal gales for the Northern Isles. That rain tends to pep up across the Northwest Highlands into Thursday evening. Wet day to come here, but it also sinks a bit further south across the rest of Scotland as the evening wears on. A lot of cloud for Northern Ireland, but clear spells for the southern half of the UK, leading to a frosty start on Friday. But the rain turns up here later on, and then it clears with drier weather for all this weekend.
Tonight, a special edition of Farage.
In her first TV interview as Home Secretary, Suella Braverman tells GB News she's proud to be British.
I think there is a tendency to apologise and be a bit shy about our greatness.
She vows to stem the tide of small boats crossing the Channel.
We need to ensure that we fix this problem of illegal migration.
The Home Secretary says she won't sell out Northern Ireland and she's not afraid of controversy. Suella Braverman talks exclusively to me, Liam Halligan. Tonight on Farage, GB News at 7 p.m.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It's 11 o'clock on the 22nd of February 2023. I'm Bev Turner. Today, Shamima Begum, who left the UK to join terrorist group Islamic State, has lost her appeal against the decision to remove her British citizenship. Get in touch with me. Let me know what you think. My inbox has been full of emails about that this morning. Supermarkets are now rationing some fresh fruit and vegetables due to a mass shortage following the squeeze on supplies. I'll tell you who and what you might not be able to buy in just a moment. And it turns out that Meghan Markle feels excluded, poor thing, from the King's coronation, meaning that she and Prince Harry may not attend as a result. Sources are claiming. Details are leaking out about how the pair feel about the upcoming coronation. Should they attend? Let me know what you think about all of the above. We've got loads more to talk about as well with my two guests who are going to be here this morning. But first of all, let's find out what's happening around the world with Aaron.
Good morning, it's a minute past 11. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Shamima Begum, who left the UK to join terrorist group Islamic State, has lost an appeal against the decision to remove her British citizenship. She was 15 when she travelled to Syria with two other girls in 2015. Her lawyers say she was a victim of child trafficking, but her case has been dismissed on all grounds. The Home Office has welcomed the ruling, saying the government's priority is the safety and security of the country. Well, earlier, Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry told us people should be allowed to return to the UK to face justice.
What we don't want, and it will be a threat to possibly our country, maybe other countries, is for there to be a large cohort of people who are simply stateless, who have no future, who have no hope, who are living in camps somewhere. What will happen to them? What will they think about, the West? What threat will they be in the long term to the West, or their children will be to the West in the long term? We do need, as an international community, to think this through and not wash our hands of people.
Talks are being held today in a bid to resolve the dispute between nurses and the government. The Royal College of Nursing has paused next week's 48-hour walkout, which would have been the biggest strike this winter. Now, the union wants 5% above inflation, but has indicated it's prepared to meet halfway. The government says a 3.5% rise is affordable, and Veterans Affairs Minister Johnny Merce has told GB News bigger pay rises will only increase inflation.
I think these strikes are helping anybody. I recognise that people want to be paid more. I recognise that some of the conditions that our public sectors work in is extremely challenging. But look, I don't think people should be going out on strike. I think we're in an incredibly difficult situation at the moment. Inflation, above 10%. That is the real challenge in constituencies like mine, driving up prices across the community. And if we, if we just go chase these pay rises all the time, the Bank of England even said themselves, inflation is just going to rise.
Up to 260 British steel jobs are at risk after the company proposed to close the coke ovens at its plant in Scunthorpe. The Chinese-owned steelmaker says the move is part of its drive to overcome global economic challenges and decisive actions needed because of an unprecedented rise in operating costs. Well, the GMB union says it's devastating news for the workers and has described the government's investment in the industry as a sticking plaster. New CCTV footage has been released of a missing aristocrat and her partner as police renew their appeal to find them. Constance Martin, convicted sex offender Mark Gordon and their newborn baby were last seen on the 8th of January in New Haven in Sussex. Video shows the couple walking near a petrol station, wearing big coats and carrying large bags. Authorities believe they've been sleeping in a tent and are concerned about the baby's welfare. The Environment Secretary says the UK has a high degree of food security. That's despite a warning by retailers fruit and vegetable shortages will last for weeks. Addressing the National Farmers Union Conference, Therese Coffey stressed the importance of protecting the environment and sustainable food production. Her speech comes as supermarkets restrict sales of certain fruit and vegetables because of supply issues following bad weather across Europe and Africa. China's top diplomat has met Russia's foreign minister in Moscow as tensions rise over the war in Ukraine. Wang Yi's talks with Sergei Lavrov come a day after the US said it believes Beijing is considering supplying Russia with military aid, a claim China denies. The two countries say they oppose all forms of bullying and the introduction of a Cold War mentality. Yi will meet the Russian President Vladimir Putin later. Political activist Brill Broder says China's intervention could change the shape of the war.
Several days ago at the Munich Security Conference, the U.S. Secretary of State Blinken made a very shocking announcement, which is that he said he believed that China was about to start supplying lethal weapons to Russia. And the reason why that's so significant is that Russia has been running out of weapons. They can't produce the weapons they need for this war.
There's another major meeting taking place today. The US President Joe Biden will hold talks with NATO leaders from Eastern Europe in a show of support for their security. Vladimir Putin yesterday suspended a landmark nuclear arms control treaty and warned Moscow could resume nuclear tests. Well, President Biden responded, stating US support for Ukraine will not waver. And Wizz Air has been branded the worst short-haul airline by passengers in the UK. Consumer group Which says the carrier received 1 star out of 5 for boarding and cabin experience, as well as seat comfort. A customer score of 48% put it below Ryanair, Eurowings and British Airways. Jet2.com scored highest with 80%. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens, but now it's back to Bev.
Good morning. Food rationing. You heard me right. It's not the 1940s, but UK supermarkets are now rationing certain fruits and vegetables. I'll give you all the details about that in just a moment. But first of all, Shamima Begum has lost her legal challenge over the decision to deprive her of her British citizenship. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, is with me now. What more do we know, Mark? This broke just after 10ish this morning. We had a statement from the Home Office.
Yeah, well, this was really about whether that decision by the then Home Secretary Sajid Javid in 2019 to revoke her citizenship was lawful. Now, he did that on the grounds of national security, claiming that Shamima Begum was a risk to national security if she came back here because of all the intelligence that he'd been told about what she was up to in Syria as a member of the so-called Islamic State terrorist group. But on that issue of stripping her of her citizenship, obviously, the British government can't do that if that renders someone stateless, but it was always Sajid Javid's contention that she had open to her an avenue of pursuing citizenship in Bangladesh because of her parents as Bangladeshi citizens, at least her father anyway, and that avenue was open to her. She's never chosen to explore that particular avenue, and indeed the Bangladeshi government has said that it would not welcome her in their country. However, it's still an avenue open to her. So in that essence, the British government are not, it seems, rendering her stateless by revoking her citizenship. And SIAC has determined that that process, as undertaken by Sajid Javid, was in fact lawful. Now, we've had a statement through from the Home Office just in the last few minutes. They say we're pleased that the court has found in favour of the government's position in this case. The government's priority remains maintaining the safety and security of the UK, and we will robustly defend any decision made in doing so. Now, what the British government has always argued, and successive Home Secretaries after Sajid Javid have argued, is that, you know, they are aware of intelligence and facts that can't be really explored in great detail in a public forum, but that has led them to the conclusion that this woman would be a danger to the public if she was returned to the UK. Intelligence suggesting that she was part of the Islamic State's religious enforcement police, effectively going round these towns and villages in Syria, enforcing strict Sharia law, that she was also involved in more activity around actually terrorist acts, such as sewing suicide vests onto ISIS fighters before they went off to carry out their bomb attacks in Syria and indeed in northern Iraq. So they are aware, the British government, they say that she is a danger, but there's a difference between being aware of the intelligence that she's a danger and having enough evidence to put before the courts. Shamima Begum supporters have always said, bring her here. Prosecute her if you have the evidence. But the fact is, it is very, very difficult to put a case before the British courts with enough in the way of robust evidence for events that took place in a lawless country controlled by terrorists.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, thank you, Mark. Well, I'm going to talk to Will Geddes now, a security expert. Will, good morning. Good to see you.
Morning, Ben.
Was this a surprise, this result? She's had a very effective PR campaign running here for the last few months. Shamima Begum, BBC-funded podcast, documentary, painting her out. I think it was called I'm Not a Monster. Hasn't worked for her in the court, though, has it?
No, it hasn't, Bev. And I'm very, very pleased that the judicial system has stood this up and they have denied her returning to the UK. Mark's points are so valid, and there is especially the points about intelligence that was gathered on the ground. There's a distinct difference, Bev, between intelligence and evidence. And the intelligence leads us to believe and actually be able to understand that Shamima Begum was not the innocent sort of participant in Islamic State as she's always claimed to be, but she was actually actively involved in assisting and aiding terrorists. Now, this in itself in the United Kingdom is a terrorist offence. So the fact that she's perpetrating it down there in Syria means that obviously she is someone that is regarded very seriously as a potential threat to the UK if she does return.
I don't know whether you saw the documentary, Will, that covered Shamima Begum. Did you see that? It was about an hour long. And I watched that sort of with a kind of queasy feeling in my stomach that I was indulging it in this, because I didn't feel that she had a right to have such a powerful PR campaign running for her. I don't know about you, but I came away thinking she wasn't terribly bright, she wasn't being terribly honest, and I think there were still some question marks over whether she could be a risk.
You're absolutely right, Bev. I mean, there were a load of questions, and I'm actually quite appalled as a tax-paying member of the general public that the BBC did such an extensive podcast on I Am Not a Monster. You know, that money surely would have served far better than being invested in a platform for Shamima Begum, who is duplicitous at best, to actually really look at the story around her family, look at the story of families that are affected by individuals that are radicalized. And, you know, although the argument that they're pushing through right now, Bev, is that she was trafficked, she was manipulated, she was groomed, that doesn't diminish the threat that she potentially presents, having been through that process. She was very compliant with what she did down there. There are a number of other factors that no doubt Mark is also aware of, which is to do with the Yazidi women, how they were treated down there, how they were used as slaves, and, you know, right along to the fact that she showed zero remorse when she was found in 2019 in the Syrian refugee camp.
She's a very unreliable witness, isn't she? And in a way, that's why it would be quite nice to see her in court, because what she said in the interviews in 2019 in the camp, she contradicted in the interviews in 2023. So in 2019, she quite casually said to the journalist that found her, well, you know, I saw severed heads in the dustbins. And yet in 2023, in the interview for the BBC, she said, 2022, I guess it was the end of, she said, I didn't ever see any evidence of any violence or any bloodshed. And I just thought, you're still not being honest with us now. Will, what do you think? What do you think her chances are of getting back here now? Do you think? I know you're not a legal expert; you're a security expert, Will. But particularly given the tide of feeling, I think this is being rejoicing. My inbox this morning is a lot of people saying this was the right decision. The government will have to keep pushing back, even from a political point of view, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there is this avenue. And I think as long as there is this avenue that's open for her to potentially return to Bangladesh, although the Bangladesh authorities have actually said that any terrorist obviously returning to the country would be subjected to the death sentence. There is still this clause within her nationality, her dual nationality entitlement, that actually keeps her in this stateless position. Now, there have already been, Bev, a number of individuals, of the 400 or so British nationals who went down to join Islamic State around about to 2015, who have returned to the United Kingdom. There is also this expatriate community down with Islamic State, and people may think Islamic State is over. They haven't finished. They're still continuing. They're still very much active in Syria and Iraq. They're still carrying out attacks. They're still planning terrorist events overseas, in the United Kingdom, in Europe, and elsewhere. This is still a very prevalent threat, and she is not inert in her participation with this. So, as you rightly say, Bev, and you hit the nail on the head. She has contradicted herself so many different times that these arguments that she's put forward as valid arguments for her to be removed from this refugee displacement camp because she's at risk from other Islamic State members that are actually there, it holds no water.
You're so right, Will. And what you made me think of as well is those who still have terrorist intent, ISIS, Daesh, whatever we want to call them now, they would see this as a triumph if she came home. It could galvanise and embolden them to then carry out acts because, look, we're a soft touch. We'll get it. Always nice to see you. Right, now, moving on. Asda and Morrison's have introduced rationing on staple fruit and vegetables, from cucumbers to peppers and tomatoes. Yesterday, Asda introduced a limit of 3 items per customer for some veg, while Morrison's announced limits of 2 on products such as cucumbers. Well, joining me now to get to the bottom of this is consumer journalist Harry Wallop. Good morning, Harry. Is it 1946 or is it 2023? How have we got to the point where our shops are telling us we can only buy a certain number of certain items?
Well, this is not the first time this has happened in recent years. I mean, not just with the run-up to COVID, when there were shortages on shelves and supermarkets responded by asking us not stockpile. This also happened actually quite recently in 2017 when there was a shortage of broccoli, which people got into a real tiz about. There are 3 factors happening here. One is very strange weather in the south of Europe and northern Africa. It was hail storms in the Sahara Desert, which is very strange for the end of January, start of February. And then there are 2 other things. Enormous price of energy. Tomatoes and cucumbers are very energy intensive crops, especially when they're grown in northern Europe. And then the third aspect is Brexit, which has made life a lot more difficult for exporters of fresh fruit and veg from southern Europe. And that's where we get a lot of our fruit and veg, particularly at this time of year, because we just don't grow any in sort of February, March period.
So what can people do, Harry? Does it mean that we just have to buy seasonal veg? I mean, it's part of the problem because we're so used to just going into the supermarket, whatever time of the year it is. We buy tomatoes, fresh lettuces, strawberries, 365 days of the year. Do we just have to start shopping smarter right now?
Well, there is that aspect. Though, of course, we have got used to the idea of strawberries on Christmas Day or in the middle of winter for the last few decades. It's not like it's a new phenomenon. And farmers do tend to grow, thanks to modern industrial greenhouses, can grow most crops for as long as 9 months of the year. This is the very specific period that we struggle in Britain to grow anything ourselves, and we rely on imports. But some of this is climate change, strange weather patterns hitting farmers. So yeah, maybe we should get used to not having the variety of goods that we once did. But people will find that hard to believe. Why should we go back to slightly, frankly, worse times than a few decades ago?
And I guess the thing is, Harry, it's going to be spring soon. We've got to start planting our own because that's the kind of world we now live in, self-sufficiency. Have you got yourself a little vegetable patch?
Well, I do enjoy planting a fruit and veg myself and my kids, but, self-sufficiency isn't going to sort it. We have always imported our food. Even in the Victorian era, we imported some of our food. We are a global nation and we rely on imports. So, yes, we should be growing more stuff. We should become as more self-sufficient than we are currently, but we will never be 100% self-sufficient. The most popular item in a supermarket basket in Britain, and has been for the last decade, is a bunch of bananas. There's no way we can grow bananas in Britain. So if we want to live with our most popular fruit and veg for at least a few months of the year, we can't rely on British soil alone.
OK, thanks so much, Harry. I wonder, Harry Wallop there, consumer journalist, I wonder if it's like my house where the bananas sit there, they go a bit brown, and then in the end you throw them out after you've given up ambitions of making banana bread. Right, you've been getting in touch with your views on the Shamima Begum story. Pat says, Bev, I read that Bangladeshis won't have her back. They consider her a terrorist threat. They said she can go back there, but that she would be tried and probably executed for her terrorist crimes. Judith says, set the precedent. We do not want our courts full, using taxpayers' money to fight unjustified applications. People who take risks need to know the consequences. Right, still to come, we'll find out how the Princess of Wales got on when her pancake flipping skills were put to the test. Cameron Walker has the details. See you in a few minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh yes, already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel. Good morning, it's 11:23. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. Now, the Princess of Wales put her pancake flipping skills to the test during a visit yesterday to a care home. Despite Kate describing her attempt as a congealed blob, staff and residents were thrilled that she paid them a visit. Our royal reporter Cameron Walker was there.
All the ones that were made earlier are much nicer than this. I'm sorry.
Pancakes may not be her forte, but Princess Catherine certainly knows a royal recipe to make it a Shrove Tuesday to remember. Residents of Oxford House Care Home in Slough were treated to a surprise visit by the Princess, who's keen to get to know local communities close to her new Berkshire home. The family-run Oxford House cares for up to 34 residents at a time, supporting them to live as full a life as possible. Her Royal Highness shared a particularly special connection with Nora Muchmore, who's 109 years old.
It's your birthday on the 7th of January. It's 2 days before mine. It's a fellow Capricorn.
Deputy Manager Charmaine Saunders was thrilled Kate made everyone feel special.
When she walked through the door, I think she makes you feel quite at ease because she's sort of very welcoming, she was very kind, she was calm, she involved everybody, and I think that was the most important thing for us, that nobody was missed out. She literally took the time to talk to the residents, and she went to the staff, hygiene team, kitchen staff, had to go at pancake with the chef.
The Princess saw how cutting-edge interactive technology can help the daily lives of residents. She enjoyed a virtual train ride which helps residents with dementia and had a go at table football on a sensory table. But it was Kate's culinary skills which drew the biggest crowd. In the conservatory, the Princess joked her children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, may have second thoughts about joining her in the kitchen.
Maybe the children won't want to do pancakes with me this afternoon. They're like, Mummy, we've seen you do it, but there's no way.
But what did the staff think of her pancake making?
It was okay. I mean, I couldn't cook a pancake with all of that media attention, but she managed to cook one. And I think she had a bit of fun doing it.
She had a really good attempt at it, I think. I don't think the pancake issue was her fault. Maybe the pan needed to be greased a bit better.
The Prince and Princess of Wales are making a point of engaging with communities on their doorstep, but their packed diaries expect to send them around Great Britain. St David's Day is just next week. The first time William and Catherine will be marking Wales's Day of National Pride with their new titles. Cameron Walker, GB News, Berkshire.
Well, joining me now is Rafe Hayden-Manku, royal broadcaster and commentator. Good morning, Rafe. Shame we couldn't see her face because she had that mask on. She's so beautiful and she's so brilliant, isn't she, at that job? She's winning the PR competition against Meghan right now, if there is one.
Yes, hands down. And I don't think that Meghan's doing too well at the moment. But, you know, looking at that footage, I think with the pancake toss, it really sort of captures the essence of the new approachable monarchy that the Prince and Princess of Wales are trying to create. And in that footage, actually, you know, you had shades of Diana, you know, when you see Catherine squatting down, kneeling down to be on eye level with people in hospital beds or in chairs or speaking to children. That's something that Diana brought, making the monarchy seem less aloof and more relevant. I think it's more clear now than ever that, you know, the Princess of Wales is the monarchy's greatest asset. And she's a lot more self-assured than she was a few years ago. She's really come into her own. And, you know, she's brought a degree of informality, but at the same time, she's maintained that grace and elegance and sophistication that one, you know, expects from royalty. And it's quite a difficult balance to be informal and approachable and fun, whilst also retaining your composure as well. And I think she's achieved that in a way almost, I would say, better than her mother-in-law, Diana, because Diana went into the stratosphere as a celebrity and became rather removed from the public, whereas what Catherine's been able to do is maintain her grounding. And I suppose that's partly because of her very middle-class upbringing, but she's a lot more connected, I think, with people today.
So after that tsunami of information and contacts that we had with Harry and Meghan a few months ago, they've gone quite quiet now. We had the South Park satirical cartoon come out, and we've had Samantha Markle, Meghan's sister, taking her to court for some defamation allegations. But they've gone a little bit quiet for now. But we're starting to see, Rafe, these few little things starting to seep out, which is what they do, right? An insider says. And by all accounts, Meghan's having a bit of FOMO. She's feeling like she's missing out on the coronation occasion, and that she's saying she's not going to feel included. She's excluded from coronation plans. What do you think they're up to now?
Yes, I mean, you have to sort of wonder what sort of alternative reality she's living in. You know, life on planet Sussex seems to be quite a fun place to live in because it's so detached from our reality. You cannot go around casting stones and humiliating and embarrassing your nearest and dearest at the same time as expecting to be treated just the same as if you had been a fully serving and loyal member of the royal family. You know, we know that they don't want to be seen to be out of the spotlight. We know that the king is very concerned about ensuring that his son doesn't feel like an outsider and will receive an invitation to the coronation, ostensibly. But quite frankly, I don't really understand why they think that they can be treated along the same lines as existing members of the royal family. Look, there is a protocol that was set out at the Platinum Jubilee when we saw that Harry and Meghan were invited, but they had their own separate arrival. There was no grand procession for them, and they were seated far away from the royal family. I don't see why they can expect anything more than that on this occasion either.
Yeah, absolutely. Rafe, thank you so much. Rafe Haydan-Manku, their royal expert. You are also royal experts at home. Amanda said they chose to exclude themselves. They left the UK. They chose to turn on their own family. They made their bed in America. They can sleep on it. Right, still to come, I'm going to be speaking to a human rights lawyer about the decision on Shamima Begum's citizenship. That's after your morning's news with Aaron.
It is 11:30. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Shamima Begum's legal team say they will challenge today's ruling and will use every possible avenue to try to have it overturned. Shamima Begum, who left the UK to join the terrorist group Islamic State, earlier lost an appeal against her decision to remove her citizenship, her British citizenship. She was 15 when she travelled to Syria in 2015. Her lawyers say she was a victim of child trafficking. However, her case was dismissed on all grounds. The Home Office has welcomed the ruling, saying the government's priority is the safety and security of the country. Intensive talks are being held today in a bid to resolve the dispute between nurses and the government. The Royal College of Nursing's paused next week's 48-hour walkout, which would have been the biggest strike this winter. The government says a 3.5% pay rise is affordable. The union wants 5% above inflation, but has indicated it's prepared to meet halfway. Up to 260 British steel jobs are at risk after the company announced it's planning to close the coke ovens at its plant in Scunthorpe. The Chinese-owned steelmaker says it's being forced to take decisive action because of an unprecedented rise in operating costs. New CCTV footage has been released of a missing aristocrat and her partner as police renew their appeal to find them. Constance Martin, convicted sex offender Mark Gordon and their newborn baby were last seen on the 8th of January in New Haven in Sussex. Authorities believe they've been sleeping in a tent and are concerned about the baby's welfare. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News.
My panel will be back with me for one last time with their views on Shamima Begum. I'm going to be talking to a human rights lawyer about that as well. See you in two.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's return to our top story this morning. Shamima Begum losing her citizenship appeal. Human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan joins us now. Good morning, Shoaib. How does this result sit with you?
Yeah, good morning. I think it's quite an expected decision, but quite disappointing. I think from the rule of law point of view, from an equality, human rights, anti-discrimination point of view, even child protection point of view. One thing that, obviously there are positives to be found from Shamima's side, and obviously the decision has gone in the Home Office's or the government's favour overall. But the court did find that there is a credible suspicion, as they put it, or credible grounds to believe that she may have been a victim of trafficking for the purposes of sexual exploitation. Eventually, obviously, the court then found that, okay, due to the doubts about and concerns about national security, the Secretary of State was entitled to make this decision. But the court has found, for the first time we've had a court making a ruling, that there is a credible suspicion that she may have been trafficked. And I think the fact that the government then has decided to, obviously we have this schoolgirl, 15-year-old, trafficked to a war zone, essentially, to Syria from the UK for sexual exploitation. And the government's response to that is to revoke her British citizenship, which I think is shameful.
Would there have been any opportunity for her to come home during that time, though? At any point, Shoaib, I do have some sympathy to the fact that she was a 15-year-old girl when she went out there, regardless of how mature she might have felt she was. Or the papers at the time said she was a very intelligent girl, a very bright child. Watching you in the interviews, I disagree. But would she have had opportunities to come back but chose to stay?
I don't think so necessarily. Obviously, that is a war zone. I know everyone keeps making, a huge issue of the fact that, once ISIS was defeated or they weren't that powerful, that's when she decided. But obviously, considering who they are and their power and their influence, and, this was a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old girl, she was forced to have sex with men. She was forced to, basically the jihadi bride, as, these girls are called. She was forced to give birth to 3 children. All 3 of them died. So in that circumstances, to then say, well, a year later, she could have realized, just buy a ticket, come back to Bethnal Green. So obviously, I think that's completely unrealistic. Obviously it takes a few years after everything she's been through. And it's once that the influence of ISIS subsided to some extent, that she was able to make contact and start this. And the same thing could be said for the UK government, obviously, not operating under those pressures. But how come they took so many years to revoke her citizenship? I believe it was 2015 when she left, 2019, her citizenship was revoked. So I think, if anyone could have done something sooner, it was the UK government. But what, they were waiting for her to become an adult before they did that? Or they were waiting for her 3rd child to die? I don't know what they were waiting for. But yeah, I think I can see why it took her so many years to come to terms with what she had done and then try to recover from it.
So in your opinion, you see this as quite a dark day for human rights?
I do, yes, and I think for British citizenship for ethnic minorities in this country, as has been said for so many times, if her parents were not from Bangladesh, if they were white and had been white British for generations, this decision could not have been taken. She would not have been deprived. She's never been to Bangladesh. She has no, connections other than her father a few decades ago came from there. So now to say that she's Bangladesh's responsibility, I think that's irresponsible. I think that's unfair. As has been commented already this morning, I think international law, the rule of law, human rights, I think that this goes against all of that, including our relationships with countries like Bangladesh. So a person born here, brought up here, schooled here, does something terrible, and suddenly the Bangladeshi, when they've been British and their whole family is British their whole lives, she has nothing to do with Bangladesh. Why should that country take her in? The UK wouldn't take someone in if they're, an American, Canadian, Bangladeshi, born there, brought up there, just because the parents were British a few decades ago. And so now this, this person who's acted appallingly now has to come to Britain and live here. We wouldn't take her. And I think it's right that no other country should do that as well. She's British. We made her what she is.
All right, thank you so much. Human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan there. I want to ask my panel a quick reaction on that. Joanna Williams, she's British. We made her what she is. I would argue that her faith, her extreme faith, and her ISIS connections made her what she is.
I would agree with you. I mean, we're being asked there to feel sympathy for Shamima Begum, and I am quite a nice person who generally does feel sympathy.
I agree, you are a nice person.
Towards people. I would really struggle to find any sympathy for Shamima Begum. I think we're getting a kind of whitewashing here of her story. We have to remember this is a woman who not that long ago, really, was laughing about seeing severed heads in a bin, and we're being told to forget that and feel sorry for her. You know, did she feel any sympathy? Did she feel sorry for the people who were dying, the women who were being raped, the women who were being enslaved at the hands of ISIS? I kind of doubt it. And yet we're now being asked to feel sorry for her. Yeah, I don't have it in me, I'm afraid, to feel sorry for her.
You're also a nice person, Tonya.
I'm really
Buxton.
not.
I can confirm.
I'm really not, and I have no sympathy at all. And what I really disliked about this lawyer just then is, yes, if her family were, if she was half Canadian, for example, and had dual Canadian identity, citizenship, sorry, yes, we would have sent her back to Canada. Don't make it a colour thing. It's not about the colour, it's about the actions of the woman. And she showed no remorse. And as I said, her actions, the way she behaved, meant that British soldiers were killed.
Yeah.
So we don't want her. No, we don't.
Right, OK, let's move on, ladies. In the Mail, around £400 million allocated for dental care went unspent on fixing your teeth at home, fixing all of our teeth because there were no dentists available to do the treatment, even though the money was there to pay them.
Can I just ask, how are dentists available to be treating all the people that are coming off the small boats at the moment? Because I know that they're getting free dental care. So why is there no dentists available for us when there is for them?
Well, there are two sort of sides of this story, aren't there? It doesn't stack up to be particularly good. Obviously, most people now have to use a private dentist because there are so few available. Now, why? I presume that as a dentist, you make a fortune when doing private work as opposed to the NHS work. I want to come on to the point that Tonya makes, though, as well at the moment about the fact that there is a huge amount of money allocated to looking after the teeth of people who come across on small boats, Joanna.
No, absolutely. It seems to be a real postcode lottery as well about these things, where the more deprived an area that you live in, the less likely you are to be able to have access to a dentist. You know, there's been some really shocking, eye-watering stories about people resorting to doing dentistry at home, like on themselves, removing their own teeth, just suffering in agony. And you think, come on, it's 2020. You know,
grow your own vegetables, only ride on a bicycle and pull your own teeth out. Welcome to medieval Britain.
It's inhumane, and you know what makes it even worse then is the fact that this money is available, you know, and yet it's not being matched up to provide dentistry services for the people who most need
it. When
it.
you study to be a dentist, is it not subsidised by the British government?
Well, yes, but of course it is. But there aren't enough of them.
No, but if they are studying to be dentists, before they can go off and do their private practice, which obviously is going to earn them more money, shouldn't they be committed to at least 5 years of national health work? And therefore pay back for the education that they're getting, and then you can move on if you like.
It's a good suggestion. One last story I want to cover, Jo. This is about the trans cartoonist with a nappy fetish, Arts King, invited to speak at a children's library. I didn't just make that up. That wasn't word salad. Explain it to us.
Well, I wish you had made it up, because tragically it is true. This is an extension of a phenomenon people may have heard of. It's been doing the rounds for a while now, for Drag Queen Story Hour, where somehow somebody, I'm not sure who, certainly not me, thinks it's appropriate to get a drag queen to go in front of preschoolers and read a story to them. Well, here's another, not a drag queen, but a transgender person with a nappy fetish. And yet Sheffield Council, for some bizarre reason that just blows my mind, thinks it's acceptable to put this nappy fetishist in front of an audience that could potentially
There might be some people
children.
just spitting out their sort of bacon butty at 11:45 on a Wednesday morning saying, what's a nappy fetishist? This is somebody that would be aroused, sexually aroused by people in nappies.
It's a kink.
And he says, I have a kink, I indulge responsibly, and I refuse to be shamed for it.
Well, I think they should be shamed. I think we need more shaming. You know, we need to be able to say this is not acceptable. We need to be able to say that if you run a library, your first priority should be to protect and safeguard children, actually, the children who come into your care, not put them before. I would use the word pervert.
This is the thin wedge. Listen to this. I'm going to read this again. I have a kink, I indulge responsibly, and I refuse to be shamed for it. So this person's like peeing and pooing on themselves and wearing a nappy, and they refuse to be shamed for it. That blows my mind. But not being shamed for things that are pretty disgusting, does that just open the door for then not being shamed for things that are really immoral and evil, like paedophilia, like all these other things? Why do they need to bring young children
Well, the brilliant
into this?
Miriam Cates MP, friend of the show, actually, she said it's widely agreed by safeguarding experts it's wrong and deeply damaging to expose children to sexualised material, and they shouldn't normalise this. Couldn't agree more. Right, thank you, guys. Joanna Williams, Tonya Buxton. We've come to the end of our show. It has flown by. Again, coming up next is GB News Live with Mark Longhurst. I'm Bev Turner. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Outbreaks of rain are crossing the country, followed by showers, but also brighter spells into the west during the course of the afternoon. It'll feel a bit colder compared with recent days as temperatures head a bit closer to average behind this cold front. This is the front that's brought the outbreaks of rain and an awful lot of cloud as well. Behind that front, although the rain will continue for a time in East Anglia and the southeast, the rain does clear eastern Scotland and eventually parts of northeast England start to dry up. But further showers follow into the north and west of Scotland, Northern Ireland, as well as Wales and the southwest, accompanied by a brisk wind, making it feel colder. Temperatures back in the mid to high single figures by and large, rather than the double figures. However, there will be some further rain at times for the northeast of England, pushing into the Midlands, as well as parts of the southeast through the evening. Some showers continue further west, predominantly around coast, but otherwise lengthy clear spells, especially for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and it's here where there will be a widespread frost with temperatures in sheltered spots dipping below freezing. But we keep the cloud across central and southern parts of the UK, as well as some outbreaks of rain first thing Thursday. That will keep things frost-free, but it will also be a damp start in places. The rain tends to fizzle out by the afternoon, brighter skies follow, and a decent slice of sunshine for the likes of northern and central England, Wales as well. But further spells of rain push into the north and northwest of Scotland by the end of the afternoon, accompanied by a strengthening wind with coastal gales for the Northern Isles. That rain tends to pep up across the northwest Highlands into Thursday evening. Wet day to come here, but it also sinks a bit further south across the rest of Scotland as the evening wears on. A lot of cloud for Northern Ireland, but clear spells for the southern half of the UK, leading to a frosty start on Friday. But the rain turns up here later on, and then it clears with drier weather for all this weekend.
Tonight, a special edition of Farage.
In her first TV interview as Home Secretary, Suella Braverman tells GB News she's proud to be British.
I think there is a tendency to apologise and be a bit shy about our greatness.
She vows to stem the tide of small boats crossing the channel.
We need to ensure that we fix this problem of illegal migration.
The Home Secretary says she won't sell out Northern Ireland and she's not afraid of controversy. Suella Braverman talks exclusively to me, Liam Halligan.
Tonight on Farage, GB News at 7 p.m.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime.